After heavily hyping the Vince Russo shoot interview since last Monday, including throughout the Thunder broadcast 2 days later, WCW ended up not airing the interview, claiming that management wouldn't allow it to air for legal reasons due to some of Russo's comments on the Hogan Bash at the Beach incident, including saying that he will quit the company if Hogan returns and that he was being sued by him due to the content of his Bash promo, with the company after not airing the original interview hyping another Russo interview for tonight done earlier in the day to replace it and edit out some of the comments that couldn't be shown last week. With very few people in the company itself know what is work or shoot recently, especially with the Russo vs Hogan and Goldberg vs Nash angles, Russo and Goldberg whose creative issues escalated in the past few weeks, including a heated confrontation when Russo laid out a plan for Goldberg to put over Booker on Nitro a few weeks back, had a meeting with Brad Siegel in Atlanta on Wednesday to try to sort out the issue with Goldberg. In the meeting, reportedly asked to do the job at the pay-per-view on Sunday to either Nash or Steiner and quit the company the next night to play off the shoot build up to the match, with Goldberg after having several disputes with WCW management over the past year and now more aware of the political game of the business, reportedly suspicious regarding the angle with him potentially being sabotaged on purpose to lessen his value, coming after talks of WCW potentially cutting or buying out some of the big-name contracts on the roster to try to balance the books, but with no realistic chance of Goldberg, who has the biggest contract in the company and 3 more years on his deal signed last year, being on the list due to the company not only having to pay most if not all his 3 remaining years in full, but will push the company further away from the WWF, with Goldberg, who on a level playing field is still one of the top 3 biggest stars in the business. Russo's interview was placed in the final quarter of the unopposed hour, doing a 2.9 rating, starting with him addressing the original interview that was pulled from Thunder, saying that he said some things he currently legally can't, but in time will tell the full story of what happened at Bash at the Beach, talking about his jump from the WWF in September, saying that he felt the company peaked after drawing all-time record ratings at the 7 rating range, which they didn't top in the past 10 months since he left, saying that he saw a great challenge in WCW, which during his first run brought the rating from a 2.8 to a 3.4 before being sabotaged by individuals who only cared about themselves, which they now eliminated, and have guys like Booker ready to take the company to a new direction, responding to Goldberg's claim saying that he doesn't like some of the people he works for, telling him that he also doesn't like some of the people that works for him, but the finish of the match on Sunday will be about what's best for the company. Nitro crossed over 9 p.m. with the finish of the Sting vs. Scott Steiner match, ending in a 4-way brawl with Nash, Sting and the Steiners to set up a tag match for the main event, followed by the entrances and start of a Booker vs. Lance Storm WCW title match, and the quarter which went against Rock. Kicking off Raw from the Garden started with one of the lowest opening segments of the year with a 2 rating. Madison Square Garden was sold out for the 14th consecutive time in the past 2 years as the company continued its hot streak in New York, with Rock opening Raw to a massive ovation, calling out Benoit and Shane after being attacked and pinned by Benoit on SmackDown, telling him to forget about SummerSlam, challenging him for a WWF title shot tonight, bringing them out to accept the challenge and set up Rock vs. Benoit for the belt later tonight in the fully loaded pay-per-view main event rematch, opening Raw with a 5.1 rating. After starting lower than usual, Nitro had its biggest viewership spike of the night between 9:15 to 9:30, with Booker vs. Lance Storm for the belt gaining over 800,000 viewers to what would be the peak of the night, 2.6 rating, ending up with Booker going over to retain 6 days from the Jarrett title match, with Storm set to go into the new Blood Rising pay-per-view with 3 belts as a big babyface on the night in front of the Canadian crowd, in a quarter which also featured Kidman's segment with a Tory Appreciation Night ending in a swerve of him showing a birthday party tape. Raw's second quarter saw a Rikishi vs X-Pac match going 3 minutes with Road Dogg watching on the monitor to build to the eventual DX match, and mainly the continuation of the Hunter-Stephanie Angle program with 3 backstage segments in the quarter, first with Hunter arriving to the Garden before going to Foley to ask for a title shot at SummerSlam to find out that Angle got him first. Nitro had a commercial-heavy quarter next with a short mud pit segment in the middle along with the entrances and start of a Mike Awesome vs Jeff Jarrett match, which saw the show dropping from the 2.6 high of the previous quarter to a show low 1.9 rating, while Raw picked up all these viewers and more with an over 1.2 million viewers gained to a 5.9 rating for a Dudleys vs Right to Censor tag match going 3 minutes, with Richards continuing to mock the PTC, copying their complaints almost word for word in his heel promo, along with 2 backstage segments of Just Joe playing the Howard Finkel role, stirring things up between Hunter and Angle about what the locker room say about the other. The finish of the Awesome vs Jarrett match, followed by the main event tag entrances, opened Nitro's final quarter, with the Sting and Nash vs Steiner's tag match jumping around 500,000 viewers but only rebounding to a 2.2 rating, as the show ended exactly at 10 p.m. with no chance to pick up viewers who are used to tune in for the finish in the overrun, going 7 minutes with Goldberg running in for the finish in a stare-down with Nash before Steiner attacked him from behind to save the first Goldberg-Nash confrontation for the pay-per-view. Raw had a 6-man tag match of Eddie and Too Cool vs Vinny's Test and Albert going against the Nitro main event, with Raw continuing to climb, entering the 6 rating range to close the first hour, followed by Stephanie coming out to apologize to Hunter in a promo crossing over 10 p.m. with the second half of it, which saw Kurt Angle coming out going unopposed with no Nitro overrun, jumping into the 7 rating range, continuing the Triangle program on the night after a show-long Angle on SmackDown Thursday built around it, with both Angle and Hunter going to Foley to ask for a title shot at SummerSlam, with Foley booking the Hunter vs Angle match indirectly built since December '99 and a #1 contender match for a shot at either Rock or Benoit, with their title match coming next. After an all-time great match at the fully loaded pay-per-view main event, Rock and Benoit went 8 minutes in the rematch at the Garden to continue their strong series of matches after showing instant chemistry since their first singles match in February, with the company putting on the Rock vs Benoit rematch as a special attraction for the Big Raw show from MSG to signal on a different direction, after at one point there was talk of a Rock-Benoit rematch for the SummerSlam main event, with the finish seeing Rock have the match won until Shane's interference to lead to Jericho's return and Rock going over to retain, with the match in a quarter which also included the second half of the Angle Hunter Foley Stephanie segment jumped over 1.2 million viewers to the peak quarter of the night 7.1 rating. After being officially announced to appear last week with him publicly invited by the Republican presidential candidate, Rock made a major crossover appearance as one of the headliners at the Republican National Convention on August 2, becoming the first wrestler in history to speak at a political convention, with Rock saying that he's representing and encouraging WWF viewers to vote in the upcoming election, while also having several high-profile interviews including a back-and-forth with PTC representative which aired on CNN, with the PTC going as far as sending a tape of edgy aspects of the WWF product to try to get Rock's appearance cancelled, with Rock countering the laughable claims from the PTC while bringing up the viewership numbers of the WWF, noting that 22 million viewers watch WWF programming on a weekly basis including 14 million eligible voters, while saying that the content on their shows is tame compared to another programs on cable and broadcast television, telling anyone who don't like the WWF shows to turn it off to another channel. Raw had two angles in the next 30 minutes building to SummerSlam matches, first with Taz calling out JR for his comments before being attacked by Lawler, followed by a Big Show Edge and Christian vs. Acolytes and Matt Hardy six-man tag match which saw the return of Undertaker to take out Show and Shane, ending up with Taker throwing Show off the stage, with the status of the originally planned Taker vs. Show SummerSlam match in question, with Show's physical condition again raising concerns in the WWF, with him set to be sent to the company's developmental territory or VW for additional training. Raw's main event entrances took place minutes from 11 p.m. including Rock coming out for commentary to find out his SummerSlam opponent, as after the last two Raw main events with Rock and tag matches drew near record-level viewership, Raw didn't reach that level again but still picked up over 1.1 million viewers to a peak 7.8 rating for the Angle Hunter Jericho three-way match, going 7 minutes in the overrun, ending up with Hunter and Angle pinning Jericho at the same time to set up a three-way match for the SummerSlam main event, coming after a Rock Angle Hunter three-way match on Raw 2 months ago did huge numbers, this time with the added triangle storyline of the Angle Hunter Stephanie feud, with Rock after the finish laying out all three involved with 3 rock bottoms to close the show. With the Goldberg-Nash-Steiner shoot build-up culminating in Goldberg walking out on the match last night to insinuate that he refused to job to Nash, Russo opened Nitro already in the ring for the follow-up of the angle, saying that the last time he was in the ring he made an example out of someone and they didn't see him again since, referring to Hogan, calling out Goldberg to take on Abbott in a shoot fight, saying that he will take him out as well but couldn't legally fire him due to a clause in his contract. Continued to taunt him through a commercial break before Goldberg came out to brawl with Abbott, with Russo signaling to the production truck to immediately take another commercial break in a chaotic start to the show designed to again blur the lines of work and shoot, selling it further by unprecedentedly already taking 2 commercial breaks 10 minutes into the show to put it over to viewers that things weren't planned to go the way they did, with Russo later in the night hyping a segment for next week, saying that while he can't fire Goldberg he will give him the chance to get out of his contract next Monday to build to another Russo-Goldberg confrontation. With the company looking at different ways to cut costs, including considering buying out several big-name contracts to balance the books, one of the more drastic changes was announced by Brad Siegel and Turner executives last night just before the New Blood Rising pay-per-view, with Siegel announcing to the roster that starting October 23 Thunder will be taped immediately following Nitro on Monday nights. eliminating the costs of renting separate buildings for the Thunder tapings while potentially boosting ticket sales for Nitro due to advertising 2 TV tapings for 1 ticket, with the clear downside being that the crowd in the building would have to stay for close or over 4 hours each week at over 12 a.m. in most markets, including the risk of injuries which will force changes to the scripts on the spot. Nitro crossed over 9 p.m. with a Booker vs. Jarrett WCW title rematch from last night billed as Jarrett's last chance at the title, going 7 minutes with Goldberg interfering for the finish, throwing Jarrett to the crowd while cutting a promo warning Russo saying that one is down with 2 to go, telling him that he's next, opening the first quarter with a 2.3 rating, with the rest of it seeing the first half of a hardcore title match. Kurt Angle opened Raw less than 2 weeks from his first ever pay-per-view main event, recapping his history with Triple H, which goes back over 9 months, saying that Hunter tried to sabotage his career since entering the company, including taking out his undefeated streak and not giving him one shot at the title, coming to the conclusion that it must be jealousy as it took Angle less than 9 months to accomplish what Hunter did in years, saying that at similar points in their careers while Angle was winning titles and tournaments, Triple H was working hog pen matches, bringing out Hunter followed by Shane to separate them and get their focus back on Rock and the WWF title, setting up the main event for the show with Foley booking a Rock and Dudley's vs. Angle, Hunter and Shane 6-man tag match to open Raw with a 4.8 rating to Nitro's 2.3, with both shows facing stronger sports competition on the night. Both shows stayed steady in the second quarter with no major drops or bumps, with Nitro having the second half of a hardcore match followed by a hyped Nash interview responding to Russo booking him in a rematch against Steiner, saying that Russo might need to be drug tested for thinking he will wrestle Steiner just because Russo thinks he deserves a second chance, saying that until Scott Hall gets a second chance and returns to the company he's not giving it to anybody else, telling management that if they want him to wrestle tonight the only one currently above him on the pecking order is Booker T, with a title shot at Booker being the only match he will work on the show, while Raw started 2 show-long angles in the quarter, with the Acolytes going to a local bar in Rhode Island and Kurt Angle waiting for Stephanie in the rain outside the building, while in the middle having a Eddie and Blackman vs. Test and Albert tag match going 3 minutes. With the WWF set to debut on the network in 5 weeks, pressure was growing on Paul Heyman and ECW to get a TV deal done in time for their final show on TNN on September 22, with Heyman after a high-profile move to replace Raw on the USA Network looking less likely by the week, with USA already advertising several movies for the Monday 9 p.m. time slot, confirming that he's talking to all and any interested parties and has faith in network programmers to eventually see the value in the ECW product, while continuing to take shots at Viacom, including on the weekly TV show, for claiming that they breached their agreement and failed to market, advertise and promote the ECW show on the channel, with TNN's responding that the actual reason for dropping the show is that Heyman's ECW failed to match rating expectations, with the show originally projected to do around a 2 rating and ended up averaging around a 1. Sting vs. Muta opened Nitro's final quarter before Nash came out for what was originally scheduled to be a Nash vs. Steiner match for the #1 contender, carrying a box to the ring, saying that since the people in charge think Hall is too dangerous for live television, he will conduct an interview with him in another way, revealing a cardboard cutout of Scott Hall, doing a survey asking how many people want to see Hall back to a huge pop from the crowd, while taking shots at the people against bringing Hall back, specifically Brad Siegel, to another big reaction, calling out Booker to put the belt on the line just as the show crossed over the top of the hour, ending up with Steiner attacking Booker to set up a Goldberg angle backstage to close the show, going less than 2 minutes in the overrun, with the final segment picking up over 800,000 viewers to a peak 2.6 rating. Raw continued to climb during the hour, peaking with a 5.8 rating in the final quarter, with Edge and Christian returning to the ring to bring out Mick Foley, announcing their first ever TLC match with Edge and Christian against the Hardys and Dudleys at the SummerSlam pay-per-view, with now massive expectations to top their performance from their WrestleMania match, closing the first hour to cross over 10 p.m. with Undertaker vs. Chris Benoit going 3 minutes to end, with Shane interfering for the finish, bringing out Kane for the save, with him ending up turning on Taker to set up their SummerSlam match after Taker's original opponent and Paul White was sent back to OVW due to not being in the right physical condition in several house show matches on the road during the week. Russo was on the WCW Internet show to talk about the recent state of the company, saying that his 10 months in WCW took years off his life and declaring that he's preparing to leave the wrestling business the moment his contract expires in late 2001, with one of the main topics of conversation being that Russo watched the second hour of Raw on the night while giving a review of some aspects on the show, saying that after watching the Raw hour it's clear to him that Vince McMahon is more concerned with the XFL and the political campaign than the WWF product, saying that their creative is in cruise control, living off the success built in the past 2 years, and he was bored with it, specifically talking about the Kane turn on Taker, asking how many times we are going to see Taker and Kane wrestling on pay-per-view, referring to the recent shoot-style angles, saying that they're trying to take wrestling television to the next level just as they did 3 years ago and challenge viewers in the Nitro product with more sophisticated storylines as opposed to the by-the-book WWF formula, while saying that on Tuesday more people are gonna be talking on Russo and Goldberg than the 6-man main event tag on Raw. While Russo was talking about already planning ahead to Monday, September 25th as a potential opportunity for WCW to get viewers to sample the product, with Raw set to move from the USA Network to debut on TNN on the night, the WWF was also already setting the stage for what is scheduled to be one of the biggest shows of the year, as after getting the latest doctor evaluation on his neck condition on Thursday and Friday, Steve Austin got the word that he's almost cleared to return to full-time wrestling in the next 2 months to get the ball rolling for his TV return after almost a year as a big attraction on the first TNN Raw to hook viewers with massive hype for the show, with Austin meeting with Vince during the week to finalize the details on his return, with plenty of fresh opponents who were added to the roster in the past year for him to work with, along with the obvious blockbuster Rock Austin WrestleMania rematch that everything was building towards since mid-99. Raw had a special appearance just before the main event, with Angle and Hunter meeting with a mystery person inside a limousine that turned out to be Vince McMahon, making his first TV appearance since going home in late June to warn Hunter and Angle after sending Stephanie away crying, with the entrances of The Rock and Dudley's vs. Shane, Angle and Hunter 6-man main event taking place 2 minutes from the top of the hour, with Rock making his first appearance on the night almost past 11 p.m. going 6 minutes in the overrun to jump over a million viewers to a peak 7.2 rating, ending up with Rock dominating until several interferences to close the show, with Angle and Hunter laying out Rock 13 days from the SummerSlam main event. with Russo announcing last Wednesday in a WCW website interview that he's gonna call out Goldberg and offer him his release from his contract on the air to open Nitro on Monday. Russo was on the phone with Scott Steiner to kick off the show, telling him that tonight is the night, with Russo, Steiner, Jarrett and Nash all targeting Goldberg, who has yet to arrive to the building, with Russo coming out at 8:10 p.m. for the promoted segment saying that he made a promise to never go back on television, but every time he's off they force him to come back, bringing out Goldberg running through the crowd to take out security, with Russo taunting him to lay him out and breach his contract, saying that he would fire him tonight if his contract wasn't protecting him, offering him to sign his official release and be paid in full, with him able to show up next Monday anywhere he wants, ending up with Goldberg ripping up the contract before Steiner showed up on screen from Goldberg's hotel room to start a show-long angle with Goldberg driving back to the hotel, followed by Booker coming out to confront Russo next with a message to Nash, as Russo responded that he made him a top player since entering the company, to end with Booker laying him out. With Raw starting at 11 p.m. in the next 2 weeks, Nitro will have 2 unopposed Monday nights in what is expected to be the company's 2 most watched TV shows since going unopposed on February, as with all eyes already on September 26 when numbers come out Tuesday afternoon to see how much of the regular Raw audience the WWF was able to attract to its debut show on TNN. WCW will have a massive opportunity over the next month to go into the show with a bigger audience who sampled its product over the next 2 weeks, with the expectation of perhaps keeping them from September 25, with Raw breaking the viewing habit with the channel switch. Nitro's final quarter of the first hour saw the debut of the Natural-Born Thrillers as a group of young wrestlers with big star potential teaming up, confronted by the Filthy Animals, to lead to a match going 8 minutes with the Thrillers going over. Booker T vs. Chuck Palumbo for the WCW title, with Vince Russo as the special referee, opened Nitro's first opposed quarter at 9 p.m. First going 6 minutes with the Thrillers group, followed by Nash laying out Booker for the finish, which saw Russo fast counting Booker to give Palumbo the title, before Cat came out to reverse the decision, with Booker eventually retaining. As the Booker vs. Palumbo title match, perhaps also with the intrigue of the Goldberg-Steiner angle going on in the background at the same time, with Goldberg arriving at the hotel seconds from the top of the hour, saw Nitro opening with a 2.7 rating, its highest rated opening segment since mid-June. Raw, coming 6 days from the SummerSlam pay-per-view, saw Rock kicking off the show to a huge ovation from the Cajun Dome in Lafayette, with a hot crowd for Raw's first show in the building, cutting a promo on Kurt Angle and Triple H to hype the three-way main event on Sunday before calling them out for tonight, bringing out Mick Foley saying that they would have to wait 6 days to not risk the match for the pay-per-view, while giving Rock the night off to major heat from the crowd, followed by Angle and Hunter coming out to taunt Rock after laying him out on both shows last week in the build-up to the match, setting up Foley booking Angle, Hunter and the McMahons in separate matches for tonight. After maintaining a bigger-than-usual audience for the first quarter, Nitro, facing strong competition from the big promo segment on Raw, saw the show dropping big between 9:15 to 9:30 to a show low 2 rating, featuring 2 matches in the quarter, with Tank Abbott vs Vampiro followed by a Smiley vs Chronic hardcore title match, while at the same time Raw, with the continuation of the Rock Foley Angle Hunter and the McMahon's segment, jumped big with over 1.5 million viewers to a 6.2 rating, to more than triple Nitro head-to-head, seeing Foley book Hunter and Angle in a tag match against the Acolytes and Shane against Steve Blackman in a hardcore title match, while after already booking Stephanie to defend the belt since Thursday, putting Rock as the special referee in the Lita vs Stephanie match being placed in the main event. With the second half of the quarter also seeing the 3 teams that will set to match or surpass the massive expectations for their first ever TLC match on Sunday, with the Dudleys vs Hardys with Edge and Christian on commentary. After the massive drop in the last 15 minutes going against the Big Star Power promo segment on Raw, Nitro rebounded over 400,000 viewers to a 2.2 rating for Nash vs Vito, going 4 minutes to end, with Booker laying out Nash for the finish, with Booker, who's scheduled to headline the upcoming Fall Brawl pay-per-view in a title match against Nash, did an interview during the week regarding the current state of the WCW locker room, including his next opponent, saying that if anybody doesn't want to work for the team they should be let go from the company, responding to a rumor on Nash potentially going back to the WWF, telling him to go there and see if he can still run with the younger headliners like Rock and Triple H, with the more aggressive, fast-paced main event style all over the building, as Nash, with a reputation for being a master at the political game of the business, publicly announced that he has 17 months left on his current deal, looking to play both sides based on the state of the business when his contract is up in 2002. Nitro, which opened its final quarter with a Jarrett and Storm vs Awesome and Morris tag match going 4 minutes, ended exactly at 10 p.m. without crossing over the top of the hour, closing the show with the main event segment of Steiner arriving back to the building, followed by Goldberg to set up the heat angle, with Goldberg being attacked by Scott, Rick and Jarrett before being handcuffed to the ropes, establishing Goldberg back as a babyface, with Steiner as the clear heel in the first Goldberg vs Steiner pay-per-view match at Fall Brawl, with this segment jumping over 800,000 viewers to a peak 2.8 rating, Nitro's highest rated opposed full quarter in over 2 months. Raw closed out the first hour with Kane vs Rikishi, followed by the entrances and start of the Angle and Hunter vs Acolytes tag match. As with Taker off the show selling Kane's attacks from the past week, Kane continued the build-up to the match, laying out every member of Too Cool to further establish himself as a heel, with the Triple H and Kurt Angle vs Bradshaw and Farouk tag match going 6 minutes being placed against what is usually the WCW overrun. As with Nitro this week going off the air exactly at 10 p.m., Raw picked up over 1 million viewers at the top of the hour to a 6.8 rating in what was also the highest rated quarter of the night, seeing the Acolytes dominate the majority of the match, playing off the Angle and Triple H problems, teaming up until Hunter hit a pedigree for the finish, with Hunter bailing out on Angle while he was being attacked 6 days from the SummerSlam main event, turning their focus to the next 2 matches, with both McMahon's and title matches set for the next hour. With his return now unofficially set for the big debut Raw on TNN on September 25, Steve Austin made a rare public appearance last Thursday, being in WWF New York along with JR during the SmackDown broadcast, along with doing an interview with the WWF website to start the build to his TV return, saying that he has 2 more months of recovery before returning to the ring according to his last doctor visit, and he's currently talking with the company on how he's gonna be written back into TV storylines, talking about the changes to the WWF roster and his absence putting over Angle, Benoit and Eddie along with the Radicals group, along with Rock continuing his hot run on top and Triple H for stepping up as a main event player, as with one of the main reasons besides the financial TV package that Vince McMahon mentioned when announcing the decision to move out of the USA Network being the preemptions twice a year in February and August despite Raw drawing significantly higher numbers. The next 2 weeks Raw will start 2 hours later at 11 p.m. for the final time due to the tennis US Open, coming after last year the US Open and Raw's 9 p.m. time slot drew a 1 rating while Raw was routinely in the 6 rating range, and still was more than quadrupled by Raw on the night despite starting at 11 and crossing over 1 a.m. The entrances for the main event took place already past 11 p.m. with Rock coming out last as the special referee to kick off the match, going over 7 minutes in the overrun, seeing Angle and Hunter and the Hardys all out in the 2 sides of the ring for the Lita vs. Stephanie Women's title match, going 5 minutes with Triple H and Angle trying to interfere for the finish with Rock laying out both along with Stephanie to lead to a Lita moonsault to win the title to a big pop, as the main event saw jumping over 1.7 million viewers to a 7.7 rating and over 9.8 million viewers in the Go Home segment to SummerSlam. With the WWF coming off a big SummerSlam pay-per-view last night in what was set to be one of the biggest draw audiences of the year, Nitro instead had a free unopposed night to potentially get some of the massive audience that was going to watch Raw between 9 to 11 to sample its product for the first time in months, with Russo, as he mentioned on the company website last week, planning loaded shows starting this week on the way to Raw's USA to TNN channel switch on September 25th. In what is seen as a rare opportunity due to the Raw audience being unsettled in different time slots and networks over the next 4 weeks. After arriving in a limousine together to open the broadcast with a video package establishing that the band is back together, referring to the last version of the NWO which started and ended in December to January without mentioning the actual name, Russo, Nash, Steiner and Jarrett along with the Natural Born Thrillers group came out for a promo, with Russo saying that this is the elite group that he planned to reform since entering the company 11 months ago, reviving the original angle built since arriving at the company with the reformation of the NWO to go against Goldberg that was cut short a week after it started, with Goldberg smashing the limousine window and Bret Hart suffering concussion symptoms, as Jarrett and Steiner hyped their pay-per-view matches against Awesome and Goldberg at Fall Brawl before Nash took the microphone for the heel turn explanation, saying that his nickname should be the Puppet Master as every couple months he lures people and so they buy his merchandise before turning on them again to reveal his real personality, hyping his title match against Booker at Fall Brawl with him as the next champion before Russo interfered telling him that it's not gonna happen at the pay-per-view, instead booking the Nash vs. Booker title match for tonight, bringing out Booker followed by Kat for the response to end this segment in a brawl, just as Goldberg showed up on screen digging a grave in the desert saying that he's gonna drag Russo and bury him to start a show-long angle, bumping Nitro over 700,000 viewers to a 3.1 rating in the second quarter with a larger than usual audience tuning in early in the show. A unique inside angle for Nitro was set last Wednesday as a bet between Vince Russo and Jeremy Borash on the WCW website Internet Audio Show, with Russo suggesting a bet on the show that Borash must get his head shaved on the Nitro broadcast next week if the opening quarter rating would be higher on the night than it was the previous week, as with last week's Nitro opening with a 2.4 rating. If the opening quarter tonight draws a 2.5 rating or above, then Borash gets his head shaved on the air, which happened as Nitro opened with a 2.6 rating to set the angle for next week, with Russo letting Borash announce a match on Nitro with Tony and Madden in return for the stipulation, as Borash, who hosts the WCW internet shows, also called by Russo to sit in production meetings, with the current creative committee includes Russo, Ferrara, Taylor, Disco, Borash and Banks, with Russo writing the full TV scripts for Nitro while Ferrara and Taylor being more involved in the writing of Thunder before the entire committee goes over the scripts to suggest changes and ideas. The Booker vs. Nash WCW title match that was originally set to headline the Fall Brawl pay-per-view was placed at the top of the hour to potentially attract regular Raw viewers tuning in at 9 p.m., leading to Nitro jumping over 1.1 million viewers to a peak 4.1 rating, making the Nash vs. Booker match the highest-rated match on a WCW broadcast since Hogan vs. Flair on February 14. Going 8 minutes with Jarrett as a special referee, eventually turning on Booker to lead to Nash going over to win the WCW title. Nitro had major angles coming one after another in hopes of hooking viewers with a loaded program, and hovered around the 3.8 to 4 rating for the rest of the show. As minutes following the Nash-Booker title change, Shane Douglas cut a promo from the crowd to end in a big spot with him throwing Crowbar off the balcony in the build to his Kidman match, issuing an open challenge to bring out Bill Goldberg to take him out. As with Goldberg and Russo in the center of tonight's show as the main angle, Russo talked about his real-life relationship with Goldberg improving in the last 2 weeks due to the more clear-cut crowd reactions, with Russo back on TV as a heel and Goldberg as he wanted from the start turning back babyface, responding to people comparing the Goldberg vs. Russo angle to Austin vs. McMahon, saying that both angles are completely different coming from the guy who wrote the McMahon-Austin feud, with Goldberg and Austin both having issues with authority figures but for different reasons. Talking about his legit issues with Goldberg, saying that there's a trust issue from Goldberg's side which he wanted to use in the storyline to build the heat for their TV confrontations and make them as believable as possible, including preparing for the possibility of Goldberg double-crossing him on air and signing his release contract in the segment last Monday. With last Monday's first opposed quarter on Nitro holding viewers better than usual with its strongest opening segment since June, featuring a Booker vs. Palumbo title match with Russo out as special referee, Russo talked about analyzing the minute-by-minute ratings of both Nitro and Raw last week, noting that with both shows having 10 commercial breaks with 5 in each hour, Raw usually only take 4 breaks in the opposed 9 to 10 p.m. hour while saving 6 for when Nitro goes off the air. Talking about changing the formula going forward after experimenting last Monday, which had a noticeable effect on viewers' retention as there's usually massive turnover for both programs during commercials. After Nash, Steiner and Jarrett were all taken out in the past hour, the hyped Goldberg-Russo confrontation opened Nitro's final quarter with Russo calling out Goldberg while bringing Vito as protection, ending up with Vito turning on Russo to drive him to the grave in the desert for the show closing angle. As while Goldberg and Russo were on the way to the location, Sting vs. Muta was placed as the main event match, ending in a brawl with Vampiro and ICP climbing on the entrance set, going back to the desert in the final minute of the broadcast, with Bret Hart making a surprise appearance driving in with another car, blaming Russo for Montreal, saying that he has done more to screw with his family and career than anybody in the business, ending up with Bret turning on Goldberg, blaming him for ending his career due to the head kick at Starrcade last year, with the final quarter with the Russo-Goldberg Angles and Sting Muta match along with the Bret Goldberg-Russo payoff segment jumping back over 500,000 viewers to a joint peak 4.1 rating, with Nitro overall jumping to a 3.5 rating in its highest rated show since February and the most watched WCW program since September last year.